Good morning. Can you guys hear me? Am I on? Kind of hard for me to tell. I'm so excited to talk with you guys today. I have 3 little ones at home, and I usually wake up around 4:30 in the morning. I was able to take a shower this morning. No one opened the door. I was like, man, I'm on vacation today. So we're here today to talk about why music matters. Just to give us a little bit of to get an idea of who's in the room. How many of you are music educators? How many of you are teachers? How many of you are administrators? How many of you are in the nonprofit sector? Okay, we see that? A nice mix. I was thinking about this on the way in before we kind of dig in. When we talk about the power of music, it starts so early, right? So if you think about if a woman or a couple has a child and they go into Babies R Us or any of these other stores, how many aisles do you see of music? Baby Einstein, Baby Genius, all of these things, right? Because we know how important it is, even for babies in the womb. Or you think about a mother who sings to her belly and puts the earphones on her belly, or even when the baby is born, she's singing the baby a lullaby. It not only soothes the baby, it soothes her. So then why then, once they start going to school, should the music stop, right? Like why does that happen when we know the power of music? So I'm hoping that today, with all of us in this room, and then if it lives on, online, that we can continue to have this conversation to hopefully change lives for kids all over this country. So I think I'd like to start by talking about how music has shaped who you've become, and when music started to take shape in your life. I'll just say both of my grandmothers are pianists. My grandmother is a concert pianist. I grew up in Wichita, Kansas. So music has kind of always been on and been around. I was taking piano lessons early on. And then in 5th grade, I joined band. Any band teachers? Yay. I was like, I want to play the clarinet. And for me, I was telling them this morning, it was the power of being able to play by myself, sure, but then playing with the group. And there's power in that. And I would do that first hour from 5th grade all the way through senior year in high school. And then I would go to math class, or I would go to English class with a little bit extra pep in my step. Like I felt like I was part of something greater. And I felt like my creative juices were flowing. So I know that even though I am not a professional musician, it's changed who I am. And it's always with me. And the things that I learned from music, I carry with me to this day. So let's start with you, Clayton, as an astronaut. Give us a little bit of your musical journey, if you will.
So my sister took piano lessons when we were young, and I thought I needed to take piano lessons because I loved to listen to her play. So I asked my parents if I could do that. I did do that, but then I found out that all my other buddies were outside playing when I was supposed to be in the house practicing. So Mom and I had some really dramatic screaming matches early in my piano playing career about why I had to be at the piano practicing and not outside playing with my buddies. But I did do that. I still play. I would go on to be a trombonist in the high school band. We had a jazz band. We had the symphonic band, all that stuff. And I also went on to become an organist. So I was the backup organist at Webster Presbyterian Church for many, many years in Webster, Texas. And I also sing. I'm not nearly as accomplished as the folks to my left, but I love music. I've always loved music, and I took music with me into space. So,
Go ahead.
So I grew up in East Texas, and my dad worked at a radio station, and I learned a lot about the music business and how that kind of stuff works, and particularly country music when I went to work with him. And I too was made to take piano lessons as a young child, and I'm so happy for that. So happy my mom made me do it. And then, of course, music became my life. I sort of was born, I think, to do music. And so it was really always a part of my life. But I did get some early music education, both in school and out of school, as a young child. And like I said, just growing up around a radio station, there's a lot of advertising and a lot of news and things like that. But, it's a lot of music I learned being at the station with him.
So I grew up from a very musical family, or in a family that was pretty accomplished musically, but I became an athlete somehow. So I think the running joke throughout my career was, dude, you're like the least athletic dude on the team. And it's true, I could never jump or run fast, probably because I came from a family of musicians. But my father was a jazz conductor and arranger for Nat King Cole in the 60s, and he met my mother. She was singing with Nat. So I had music all through my house. I remember my dad would write arrangements for big band, so we had like trumpets and slide trombones and drums and just all these things in my house when I was 5, 6, 7 years old. So I would mess around with all these. But for some reason, my father, he did like the athletic thing, probably because every musician wants to be an athlete and every athlete wants to be a musician. So, so that was my path, and growing up. So I had it early. I think I was really fortunate.
I'm going to dig in here, but while we're talking, if you have a question for the three of them, do you guys all know how to use the app where you can ask and everybody nods their head? Okay. So then towards the end, about 15 minutes before we're over, we'll answer some of your questions. Let me start with you, Clayton. Astronauts represent the sciences, but you said that you see music and science going hand in hand, complementing each other. Can you talk about that and how music played a role in your career? You talk about taking music to space, but how did it play a role?
Well, I think that for me as a youngster and doing the music thing, it's very technical. And there's a lot of memorization involved depending on what you do, which is very similar to the astronaut world. But I think for me, when it became most prevalent to me was when I studied physics, right? You can't make music without physics. You cannot make a slide trombone make music without the physics that's involved. And when I started to learn those concepts about how the physical world works and how that becomes the way a musical instrument produces its sound, I was pretty fascinated. And to be a physics major in college and also to be a musician was hugely important to me. So I'm a STEAM guy. I'm not a STEM guy. I'm a STEAM guy, right? You got to put the arts back in there, baby. And A should be big, because if I take any physics concept, I can relate it to music and backwards, mostly backwards, right? So we should be figuring out ways to bring musical principles into the scientific classroom as well, and using that as an example of how the two work together. So, and it works for chemistry too, right? If you paint in art, the paint that you use can be mixed as a chemistry problem to create the different colors and the different textures and the different things that go on a canvas. So I think the two are very important, not to mention the fact that it expands your brain to be able to write music or to understand that there's 4 counts to a whole note and 1 count to a quarter note and half of that for an eighth note and 16th and all those great things. That's all math. That's all it is. It's math in a musical form. And I took music with me in space to help me relieve stress and to keep me close to Earth. Having a CD from a guy named Rick Cluth from Nebraska, I played Nebraska music a lot, and that helped me through several tough days.
So do you think to follow up on that, there would be a way for schools to somehow integrate what they're doing in science and music? Frankly, I think the Today Show, we'd be in that classroom talking about that nationally. That's a story,
right? Because
you don't really see. So what would it take? Would it take educators coming together, this science teacher and this math teacher and this music teacher saying, hey, let's do something. Let's create a curriculum.
Absolutely. I mean, how many times, if you're a physics teacher in the audience or a music teacher in the audience, how many times have you walked down to talk to the physics guy? Or you walk down to talk to the chemistry guy or gal? I say guy, I'm from Nebraska, so sorry. Or, right?
Sure.
And how many times does the administration request that you get together and try to work together and figure out ways to integrate your basic premise ideas into each other's curriculum?
It's a great concept. Leanne, let me bring you in here. Music is your profession. Let's talk about what skills music has given you in other areas of your life that it's helped you.
Well, I was very shy and still am kind of an introvert, and so music can help a lot in those situations. And I've seen it with other kids too. Maybe somebody feels like they don't fit in, but they can play piano, and they're at a party or some sort of social function, and all of a sudden they're playing piano, and now they're the life of the party, so to speak. And so those are just little skills, little things that can help kids who are maybe feel like they don't fit in. Not everybody is an athlete. Not everybody is a scientist, but music is something you can take with you everywhere and forever. This is something you can do right, in your 80s and play music. And so I think too, speaking as a mother, just thinking about having music class at school, it's taught by a musician, a music person, and this is an element that you're not going to get with a teacher at a blackboard and a math problem, the emotional part of it. Just thinking about kids needing that time and to bond with each other makes the whole day go better, And those are the things I think about when I think about my music classes as a child.
Exactly. It's kind of like what I was saying. It's like you're part of something greater. You meet friends, perhaps, that you wouldn't otherwise have met. Barry, let me bring you in here. First of all, as an athlete and a musician, but when we think about athletes sometimes, a lot of people think about the athletes with, the headphones on before they, jump into a game or they swim or what have you. But it's much more than that. Talk about your personal experience with music and the seeds that you had early on and how it helped you with your profession.
Yeah, for me, I actually started playing music myself. I had this inheritance or whatever, but I started playing guitar when I was 21. I had just signed with the Oakland A's, and I knew that I was, my life was very focused, very myopic. It was eat, sleep, and drink baseball for, most athletes do that, from the age of 6 up. And so that was when I introduced actually this part where, okay, being creative and, it's very linear, as we were saying. It's math, it's physics, all the chord progressions, it's all kind of right in front of you, but at the same time, it's very non-linear. And so it's this really great balance of creative, but then something that's very structured. And so my life, that was very structured, practice this many hours a day and be in the backyard, do this. Music for me became an outlet that I never thought it would be. I mean, I remember I had some very turbulent years in my career where I was falling short of these huge expectations of this contract. And I remember, just nights I'd go back to my hotel room and I'd just pick my guitar up and I would just start playing it or start writing a song, and literally at times just wished I could just do that all day because my day-to-day was so stressful and the roller coaster emotionally. So for me, it really helped stabilize to have something to turn to that was not my day-to-day. And I think for kids in school, we all have pressure on us every day, whether it's a kid that has a test the next day and he's feeling anxious about that, something to turn to that's just his and nobody else's. I think there's, so much to be said for that.
Can either of you also speak to the power of the social, emotional aspect of music? Anytime, maybe a particular time in your life where it's gotten you through, kind of like Barry, or just in general, can you speak to that? Everything from, like he said, a test or auditions where you learn where you have to, get in front of people and perform, or the social, emotional piece. Can either of you speak to that?
I think I totally agree with what they're saying about bringing someone who is introverted out to become an extrovert. There are other aspects of this where you have to perform under pressure, and music can do that for you because you can drop yourself into the music that you're performing. You can close your eyes, right? If you know what you're doing, you close your eyes and you can put yourself in a place that is away from everything else, but still convey the emotion and the passion that you have for the medium that you're choosing to express yourself in. When I spent 5 months in outer space with 2 Russian guys, our musical tastes were quite different, believe it or not. But I could use music to throw myself back to my hometown in Nebraska or to America. I used to listen to Neil E. Boyd, the guy that was on America's Got Talent, and he recorded God Bless the USA. And I would listen to that while I rode the treadmill on the Space Shuttle Discovery a couple hundred miles above the Earth. And the emotional high that gave to me was incredible, and I never would have guessed that was what would happen. But it's got a tremendous power to move you, to take you to another place, much like reading a book can throw you into a story that you can get away from life. Same thing with music, to me.
I was just about to ask you that. We were talking about that behind the scenes, especially for kids in communities where, quite frankly, they can't take a trip for spring break and go to the Dominican Republic like other kids. Or, I think about some kids where I grew up in Wichita who have always been there. But just like a book, can take you away. Do you think musically, Ann, do you agree with that it can take kids to other places. If you think about jazz and classical and all the exposure that they're getting. And I'm really hoping, in addition to what we're talking about in this room, who knows, maybe this will be on YouTube and some administrator in some district will say, you know what, we do need to put this back into our curriculum because it's important for these kids in this community. What would you say?
It's so important. Like I said, and the social part of it, like you said, and when you're in a group, like say choir or band, and you're learning to do your part and get along with everybody else who's doing their part, and you find out what happens, when somebody doesn't do their part, and all that sort of thing. And so I think it's so very important for kids to have that outlet and learn from that. They're using a different part of their brain, and I think it does boost when you go to other classes. You can learn more in those classes because you've exercised different parts of your brain. But that whole idea of bonding with other people, it teaches empathy. I mean, you watch somebody sing, when you watch Aretha Franklin sing, you might not have been through exactly what she had been through, but she draws you in, and you somehow you understand what she's feeling when you might not if you just read it or if you just learned it, in a textbook sort of way. So I think music teaches that.
Let me ask you about your daughter, Leanne. Aubrey Sellers, she's a talented musician in her own right. How did you incorporate music into her life at an early age, and what difference did you see it make in her education and overall how it shaped her?
Well, in our family, music is the family business, so we don't really know anything else. And so she was around it, surrounded, totally immersed in it constantly. So it's a little bit different than the average family. Music might come and go as part of their day, But with both my girls, music has given them an opportunity to, they share it with their friends. That's their thing. Everybody has their thing, and that's their thing. And so I've seen kids who, I just read a story the other day about a guy who's putting himself through college with piano gigs. He plays for weddings or he plays for these parties and things like that. And that's something he'll be able to do forever. And I always thought, I remember telling my husband, if we can teach these girls to sit down on a stool, play the guitar and sing a song, they'll never go hungry. Everybody always needs music, whether you do it full time or not.
Barry, let me bring you in here. We were saying, most of us haven't been to space. Anybody else been to space? Anybody else ever played in the World Series? So talk about, as a professional, there are many people who would say sports, it's separate. For someone listening, let's say, who's a coach, who you have a kid who quite often, I remember seeing this, where the coaches and like the band instructor or the extracurricular activity teachers would try to pull the kid in one direction or another, keep them siloed, if you will.
Sure.
Can you speak to that and talk about the importance of having something else, especially sports? Because you think about parents, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, they're all in. And sometimes that's all they want their kids to do. Can you talk about the importance of being able to have both?
Yeah, I think that balance is the key here. That's what we're talking about. And I think that, just to be totally honest, my therapist is going to tell me that I need to be more balanced because I get too focused on things, right? And I think we all do that, especially when we're telling our kids to do that with, you got to get your work done, you got these tests and this and that. And the fact that there's not as much kind of credence given to music class and that some people may not see the tangible benefits of that, as adults, our therapists are saying, you need more balance in your life. Stop focusing so hard on work. Go do something that you love to do. So if we can start to get that into the heads of the kids, and like Leanne said, it's an outlet. And, my take on it is the kids that are in school, they're going to find the outlet. Now, there's not a guarantee whether that's going to be a healthy outlet or an unhealthy outlet. So if we can give them an opportunity to have a healthy outlet, whoa, I really like this guitar thing, or playing trombone or whatever it is, I'm gonna kind of like do that at home a little more, or maybe I can come up with a way to get an instrument at my house and dive into that, and then maybe in some compromised neighborhoods, they're not gonna be running around late at night with their friends because they got nothing better to do. And I think that spark of passion is really gonna create something long term that could keep people in a much better place in life.
I was just sitting here thinking about the power of parents, right? So for parents who are listening online or for parents in this room, there's something to be said about the power of creativity. Quite often we want them to do, like you said, STEM, reading, writing, arithmetic, or what have you. Listen to this. There's a statistic. 72% of business leaders say that creativity is the #1 skill they're seeking when hiring, especially when careers are changing these days and our kids are going to have to think out of the box. Can you give any advice or maybe anything we can do proactively when we talk about the power of science and being able to think out of the box, or just in general, what people in this room can do, almost a point of action? Because now we know about it, we know about the importance of creativity, but how we put that into practice, what can we do?
Well, we can do exactly what we're doing today is one way. And if we all go out of here, I love teachers, by the way. I love educators. I love to speak to educators. And oftentimes I challenge them that we have the power to change a life. Every single day, whether we're a parent, grandparent, relative, baseball coach, dance instructor, Sunday school, or just a neighbor, we have the power to change a life by the way we do things, by the examples we set, and by the things we expose kids to. You know, I remember as a youngster that I had to go to church every Sunday, right? That was a requirement. But what I didn't understand until I got older was the fact that if you do go to church, there was music everywhere. And one of the things I don't think we do enough these days is when kids are in Sunday school, I had to play the piano for the various Sunday school classes when I was a junior high kid and a high school kid. That was part of my obligation to the church. And I loved it because I was helping to expose those kids to music. And each one of us in our own way can take this power to change a life mantra with us. And you don't have to change 100 lives. You can just start with one or two. But if you do that and you try to expose them to the benefits and the pluses from music, we'll have a better citizenry, if you will, I think.
You have a thought there? I was just reading this, another one. Students who receive an arts education perform better on assessments of creativity. So it just goes to show its power. Can either of you speak to that?
I've always heard that, you know, and I can certainly see that. I just think that the creative part of it and working together with other kids, and so not only being creative in your own mind, but creating with other kids too, and the math aspect of it, like you brought up, and there's also a physical aspect to music. All of these things are so important, and everybody can play music. That's one thing that not everybody's not going to be great at it. Everybody's not going to become a professional musician, but everybody can play music, and everybody enjoys music. And it does take you somewhere else, takes you to another place, as we discussed. And I just think it's a shame to rob anybody of that experience.
Any thoughts, Barry, on how to be proactive on doing this? Because I think sometimes it feels like we're preaching to the choir, right? We all know the importance of music education. A lot of us are music educators. But it's about taking it from this room and taking it to the next step. You know, CMA is doing their part to try to, you know, do what they can, but it takes all of us. Any thoughts you can give on that?
You know, yeah, I mean, it's a challenge, right? To convince, you know, the powers that be, I guess, that being creative serves it serves the child and it serves them in their life. And, you know, I just think, you know, when you have a class full of children and they're all doing the exact same curriculum and the exact same, you know, studies and books, you know, when you give that child an opportunity to have something that only they can call their own, that they're proud of kind of in a different way than doing great on a test score. I mean, it just, you know, that just changes everything. I mean, creating something that wasn't here yesterday, whatever it is, in any form of music that we have, right? The instruments or singing. I mean, it's just so obvious that gives a greater sense of self-worth to the child, and, you know, how to get that across to the powers that be. I mean, that's what we're talking about here today, right?
Yeah, we have an astronaut, we have an athlete, we have a musician, we have a news lady. You know, it's interesting. I was talking, we were planning this. Pretty much everybody I work with on the Today Show, we were talking about it, everybody plays an instrument or played an instrument growing up. And it came out randomly one day, and I thought it was so interesting. You know, Savannah Guthrie plays the guitar, or, you know, I played, you know, the clarinet. A lot of us did. And I will tell you this, the adults that you talk to who didn't have a chance to take piano lessons or band or whatever, they all want to pick it up as an adult. We were going to start a Weekend Today band just because Dylan Dreyer, our meteorologist, she said, you know, I always heard my friends complain about taking piano, but I kind of wish I did. So you meet these adults who wish they had taken it up, right? So Do you find that in your circles, in your line of work, that the people around you were also, I guess it would be different from you, but did you find other people who enjoyed the power of music, or were you on your own, or what's in your circle? What do you see?
There are a lot of astronauts who play instruments. Many of you may be familiar with the Canadian Chris Hadfield, and he sang a song from outer space. We had Andrew Feustel's, another tremendous guitar player. Katie Coleman played the flute from space. So it's very prevalent within the astronaut community that people have creative minds as well as these, well, I'm not really that smart, but.
Are you kidding me?
Oh.
Did I'm Snuffleupagus? Like, are you kidding?
In the astronaut office, I always strive to be just slightly above average.
What?
Trust me on that. But a lot of them have great musical skills, and that's another platform that we can use. I'm not going to fly into space anytime soon again, but those guys are in space performing, and they're tying in with thousands of kids on the ground, and that's a powerful message that we can send.
That's a really good point. Either of you? Go ahead.
Well, I think it was Tiffany from CMA who said in the dressing room back there that if you can get the parents in the community to demand it and to get active, and as I've watched, my parents were both teachers, and so as I've watched, I do know that the more parental involvement a school has, the more successful the school is. So that would stand to reason, I think, as far as music class goes. You get parents who want it and insist on it and keep driving that point to the school district.
And what about you, Barry, in your circle? Did you have athletes who were also into music, or was it pretty siloed?
I mean, you'd be amazed. I mean, I'd say, if I could count the hours where, I was in this locker room full of these players, and of course they could all afford like the nicest guitar, right? So I'd call my guy at Taylor and artist rep guy and be like, hey, I'm gonna need another one of those guitars sent up, And I literally would just be in the clubhouse or like in the hotel rooms on the road giving these guys lessons, because all of them were just so hungry for music. I mean, they know the state that it put them in before the game, but they just wanted to create it, And then of course I was perpetually frustrated because 8 months later, that thing, I'm like, so how dusty is that guitar? And can I buy it off you? 'Cause you're not gonna, but like they're just so hungry to create. And probably gave 20 players guitar lessons along the way.
Really?
Yeah,
I think that's fascinating.
They're all obsessed with it, yeah. And I mean, that's a through line. We just know it. No matter what our circle is, people, they want it. They want to figure out how to do it.
I feel like mission accomplished when we talk about proving that, again, you don't have to be a professional musician to feel the impact of music. We're going to get to your questions coming up in just a moment, so go ahead and get those through. I see people looking down for these three. It's not every day you can talk to an astronaut, musician, and a former baseball player, professional baseball player, and now musician coming up. Is there anything else that you guys want to, before we get to their questions, when you go back home that you want to leave them with, or something that you want to make sure you get out, especially from your personal journey?
I believe that well-rounded kids are better citizens. I think that well-rounded means academic, it means musical, it means athletic. And I think that the interaction, as we've talked about before, the interaction is so important, because the leader of the football team, if placed in a musical environment, may not be that leader anymore. They may have to be a follower, and they may learn from the leader in the musical group, right? So there's a lot of play between these groups that can benefit those individuals and help them to grow. And I'm a big advocate of multi-disciplined people, like as we also have talked about, right? I was an athlete, I was a musician, I was a science guy. I did all of it, and I think that helped me become an astronaut.
Anything you want to leave them with before we get to their questions, Leanne or Barry?
I just think that if I had not had music class, like in elementary school, I don't know if I would have ever made it all the way through school.
Why do you say that?
Well, I just wasn't, I didn't enjoy school for a lot of reasons, except I think that my one music class helped me get through a lot of the other things, and that might be, something else for another kid, but because of the joy in the music class, it just really helped me, and I know a lot of other kids who didn't end up becoming professional musicians get through the day. And, it helped me get through my math class. It helped me get through these other things, and I think that's very important.
That's powerful. Barry?
Yeah, I mean, to Leanne's, point, I mean, I think music always gave me an ability to access emotions that I don't know if I could have accessed them just without that.
What do you mean by that?
Like, for me, through the college years, if I was feeling angry or, frustrated, I would, I'd blast some Fiona Apple or like some Radiohead, and it was and it would help me go there. And then it's like I didn't really have to act on that emotion because I kind of like got it out. As opposed to maybe if I'm suppressing that and then, go make some bad decisions somewhere else in my life.
It's so interesting to me. I just had a little aha because, Leanne talks about how, you can only imagine how many kids in this country where thanks to music, they stay in school or they want to go to class. And imagine if they didn't have that. Or you think about what Barry said, he's able to channel sometimes if he was frustrated or sad through music. You think about how much money we spend on discipline and detention and after school and trying to come up with all these activities to try to counteract, kids acting out when who knows, maybe it was music that could have done that, right? Let's get to some of your questions because there are a lot of them. Okay, this first one says, given that kids have so many other distractions growing up, this is a good question, smartphones, et cetera, how might we get kids to practice music to get to a point where they can benefit?
Discipline. It's discipline. It teaches them discipline as well. And as much as I love music, my mom had to make me practice. Yeah. And I can remember just being so mad about that. But, thank goodness she did.
Mm-hmm. My kids, I have 2 cell phones. So for them, it's like, oh, great, 2. And then one doesn't have one. So now I hold onto the phone and they have to practice piano first. And they have to practice their guitar first before. And they'll practice 20 minutes, how many minutes? And they'll get it in, if I reward them for 5 minutes of whatever it is on their phones. But I think sometimes, unfortunately, if the smartphone has to be the bait to get them to practice, it works. And you know what else, too? My kids are competitive. So one will sit down and play, and then it makes the other one want to sit down and practice as well. The next question says, as a songwriting teacher, I'm focused on citizen artistry. At what point did your writing become more about the audience as rather than own catharsis?
I think it goes back and forth. I don't know that there was a point, but I think it goes back and forth. Sometimes it comes from within, and sometimes you write about things that other people that you see, and that you feel like need to be written. To make a difference or change and things like that. So I think that for me goes back and forth.
What about you, Barry? You right?
Yeah, I think that it's almost like two can be the same. If you're crafting that song, like some of the greats do, you can write about the most personal struggle and do it in a way where you're telling everybody's story for them. And they're just instantly like, oh, that's me right there. First verse, that's me right there. There's a beauty to that, which is why it's a craftsmanship, Yeah.
This question says, how can we message the importance of music for music's sake? Yes, attendance, culture, teamwork, et cetera, but also valuable on its own. It's a core academic subject. Ooh. Anybody speak to that one?
I think we've talked about that a little bit in that it's physics, it's math, it's music, and all those things can be integrated. I don't know, maybe there's a class out there, maybe there's a school out there that's already doing it, and I may be ignorant to that, but I don't see why you couldn't have music and math and all those things integrated together as part of your curriculum. I know that we do it in other subjects. Sure seems
It's a
like
great idea.
Do it in school.
Does anybody know of any music and math programs? Yes? No? Okay, 1 out of a billion people. No, I'm just kidding. But that's actually a good idea. It's like I said, when babies are in the room, we know how important it is, and then once they go in the classroom, we're so big on, math, art, science, that we forget those things. Here's another one. You just said this, bringing the A back to STEM. Clayton, how might educators make relevant connections between space science and music? So give them, what can you, give them some tools. What would you say?
You can, music theory is a study or is a class that a lot of people don't like because it is so boring. But if you can take it and you can combine it with something that's not boring, because I think there are ways to do that. You're kind of catching me off guard right here in giving you any specific details, but I've seen it a lot, right? When you take that string and you cut it in half or tighten it, you hold it on the ends and you get a note when you pluck it. And if you pick it in the middle and you get a different note that's part of the chord. And I mean, you can go on and on and on. The trombone slide, as it goes deeper out, it makes the travel of the air longer, which changes the pitch and all those good things. And it's fun. So I leave that proof to the reader. But I think you can do it.
That's good. This one's for you, Barry. It says, what are the parallels between sports and music, which you talked about? And what does music do better? What do sports do better? Ooh.
That's interesting. Sports and music, people have asked me that question a lot. Is it harder to get out and, perform in front of people just with a guitar or to pitch? And, it was always more liberating to play music, is always, because I still do it. But because being vulnerable was never something that came easy to me. And so I think music and creating and co-writing or whatever you're doing, it's causing you to kind of be comfortable with these parts of yourself that normally I feel like we're all taught to kind of push down or, hide that because that's not kind of pretty and we don't want people to know that. And but the beauty that I've learned is that in just performing, I mean, Leanne would know more than anyone, but the more honest you are, the more people love it. And I just think there's a great lesson there. Is like, yeah, this is just this infectious thing of just being authentic. And being authentic on a pitching mound looks a little different, but like 60 feet away, this guy's trying to like derail my career. So, I mean, all due respect to the fans out there, but like I'm fighting for my life out there. So
That's really interesting. Here's one. This is a good question. The phone is a musical instrument. Shouldn't we engage with kids on their terms, not ours? I'm so torn.
that's interesting.
Yeah, you have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. So yours, your daughter's older now, so you probably didn't have it as much, the phone. Do you, with the 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, do you try to keep the phone away, or have you lost the battle already?
No, we fight hard against technology.
You do?
Yeah, we do. We fight it, but that's I love.
It's a really good question.
There's a hip hop artist now in LA. I was just watching this YouTube, and he's big on the voice note thing, and he has some kind of high fidelity voice note app where he's able to like sing in his ideas, and he'll build his tracks around his actual phone.
Who is that? We did a story with him.
Charlie Puth, was it?
Yes.
It's one of these guys.
Yes.
Yeah. But this phone now you can get GarageBand on your phone, and you can be like multi-tracking, editing, putting MIDI in there, and all these different things. So it's a really interesting question to engage them and be like, okay, here's your phone, but you're going to be making music for an hour. I love that.
I'm so torn. I'm looking. Go ahead.
I'm going to jump in here. I think that's a good idea, but I do want to jump in and just say there is no substitute for a wood instrument. It has a physical impact or a real voice. It has you don't just hear those things, you feel those things. And so I think both are good, but that's very important to me.
It's a hot
I
topic.
felt it.
Well, Barry said it before, balance,
Yeah.
right? And how much are you going to let the kid drive what's going on? I think sometimes we let them drive too much, but balance is important in all this stuff.
Good questions. Okay, here's a good one. I agree music can provide a tremendous power to take you on an emotional roller coaster. But why or how? Is there any physics behind the why?
Huh.
We're all looking at you.
Me?
Yeah. You say the word physics, I don't know. Is there science behind it?
Is there? Well, I'm sure there is, right? I don't study the brain. I know that there are two halves, a creative side and the other side. So I'm going to guess, Alex, brains for 2000, yes. There can be physics behind this or what do you got? Neuroscience, I guess.
I would think
Right,
so.
because there have probably been studies of people in comas or whatever where music was played constantly or I had a friend, bless his heart, who lost his wife, and she had had a stroke, and I was there the last day of her life, and he played the Messiah against her chest from his cell phone, and when the song was over, she was gone.
Wow.
I mean, that tells me yes. How, I don't know, but
You
it tells
don't
me.
know, but I think that's some of the beauty and a lesson to be learned is that you don't know, but every one of us, I guarantee you, has felt it.
Yes.
So we don't know what it is, and so it's important to know that there are things that we don't understand and we don't get, but we just feel. And that's an important part of life.
Just slightly above average.
This one says, I think we've kind of answered this. How do you feel about the way technology has impacted the production of music? Software allows people with no formal training to create music.
Which is cool, that everybody can do it, as I said earlier. And I love that. But, you know, like I said, there is no substitution for listening to a choir and the different parts, you know, the different harmony parts and how that affects you physically and emotionally. Or hearing a real piano versus a digital thing, you know, but hearing those strings and those hammers strike the strings and the wood encasing, you know, reverberating that and that does have a physical effect that digital music doesn't. So again, you know, both are cool, but I just don't want to see real instruments completely gone because, you know, it's too easy and cheap to do it this other way.
It's interesting that you bring that up because here's a question. These are good questions. Is it a school responsibility to, wait, did I lose it that quickly? Where'd it go?
Nope.
There it is. Is it a school responsibility to teach children to play instruments, or should we only present them so that each child can seek specific training?
As a young kid, right, we did the recorder, you call it? We called it a tonette back when I was in school. Yeah.
I like that better.
Recorder's boring. Tonette was cool. But you know, there's a difficult area here in school responsibility because teaching kids to play instruments assumes you have instruments. Having instruments assumes you have money.
Yep.
Having money assumes you have, you know, so we need the CMA Foundation and the Mr. Holland's Opus folks to be helping us, right? We all need help. And I think that's critical, and I think that's totally necessary because I'm with Leanne totally. If you can't, I really want you to hold the instrument in your hand because it gives me a level of creativity that I don't necessarily feel electronically. You know, I play an electronic keyboard, but I always want the piano, the baby grand or a grand if I could do it, right? But that is important to me. So, but I really do think that a lot of families can't handle this part financially and just because of their social family makeup and that sort of thing. So I think it is incumbent upon the schools to help as much as possible to get these kids interested, to put the instruments in their hand and let them make music. I don't care if they have no rhythm. I don't care if they have no tone. I don't care. Let them bang the snot out of a drum. It's fun.
Yeah, it's true.
Right? Or play the clarinet early in your career, right?
Yeah. We were so proud of I'm so sorry, this is gross, but the spit that would leave from the bottom, we'd leave band class and we'd be like, you know.
If you play trombone, you can put it in the girl's purse that sits right in front of you.
That's another hot topic. Okay, this is a good one. Should regular schools focus on music culture or techniques, playing instruments and reading music notation? Balance.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Go ahead, Barry.
There's that left brain knowledge of retention of information,
Yeah.
right? Like a history class or a sociology class, which is important to know about the Beatles and how music has evolved from the blues and all that. But I think there's something to be said for just like I said, this is yours. Like, do this. What is it? We're not judging it. Just like make this.
Yeah.
Figure this out. You know. And I love what Leanne said. You know, that blend of like wood and wire, we like to call it. You know, it's. You know, but even if the introduction to music is just like, this is a chord and you can just make it on your phone and play it. It's just a 4-chord progression. Whoa, okay, and then there's this thing called a piano. Now check that out. It's way cooler. You can actually play them, you know?
Yes.
But I wonder if that's like the in somehow or something, you know?
There's a question here that's at the top, but I think I'll leave this to, you know, they're asking about industry leaders donating kindergarten or instruments to kindergarten classrooms and getting a movement. Do we think that, you know, some of the bigger artists would do that? And I think we know the answer to that question. Don't you think that they would, if we could come up with something, they would donate instruments to classrooms?
Sure.
Yeah.
You just have to ask, maybe.
Yeah. Okay, I'll leave that up to the organizers that be. Here's this, another question. With children gravitating to one genre, this is good, what vehicles or tools are suggested to navigate them toward, different genres or instruments? I mentioned earlier that, classical music or, jazz, those kinds of things were introduced to me. But how do you get kids who say, I just want hip hop, or, oh, I just want rock and roll, or what have you? Is it just the teacher, or what do you think it is? Are there new methods? What do you think?
Pointing out people that they look up to. Okay, let's say a kid is in school and there's a rap artist that they love. You can find some rap artists that dig classical music, that took classical music lessons, as a child. Things like that. I think once they go, oh, well, Jay-Z thinks it's cool. Okay, well, then I'll check it out.
That's good. This one says, everybody can play music, in quotes. So what do you say to teachers about music and the education of people who are not fully abled? Teachers insisting on risers, for example.
You mean like risers to stand on?
I'm not quite sure.
I'm not sure.
I'm not quite sure
Anyone
about
can
that
play
one.
music. So what do you say to teachers about music and the education of people who are not fully?
Fully able. Oh, in wheelchairs. Yeah, no, absolutely. You make it work. Oh,
What?
that's a good point. He was saying, they have some schools where kids are disabled, so, they can't grab instruments with both hands, or they can't get on the risers. It's all, I guess it all speaks to trying to, make it work for our kids, right? It's probably a funding issue. It's a good point.
But funding issue aside, I think there are ways that you could do it. It's going to take some cleverness, but if they're simply in a wheelchair, there are instruments they can play. If they can't use their arms, but they have the ability to use their feet, you can put them on a hi-hat, right, and let them thump the hi-hat. I mean, it just takes a little thinking outside the box.
And also just getting in the room and feeling it, because there is,
Oh,
like
yeah.
I keep harping on this, but there is a physical. You do feel those real instruments and stuff. Just getting in them next to someone who's playing or things like that.
We have time for the second to last question. This one says, and we've kind of talked about this, but this way I'll bring it home. It says, why do you think music is not viewed as important in some of our schools? I think we kind of have spoken to that, but what would you say before I get your final thoughts here today?
Yeah, I don't know why, but it's frustrating, isn't it? I mean, there's always money for football, but there's not always money for music.
This whole room just went, yes!
I know. I grew up in Texas. I
Yeah.
know.
Well, it's not how do you put that on a spreadsheet? How do you can't, it's not a test score, it's making an impact on the child that you can't really measure. So maybe when somebody just wants to see hard numbers and say, why should we allocate funds here? That doesn't make sense to me. I can't measure it. I don't know.
There is one thing we could do better, I think, in my opinion, to go back to in Texas where football is king. There are a lot of kids on that football team that are pretty darn good musicians. They're pretty good actors. They're pretty good whatevers. And my son went to high school where football was king, and he was a very good trombonist, and he was good at a lot of things, and he was told he would be able to do multiple things. But when it came down to those multiple things, and a coach said, I need you here, and he said, well, I can't. I have trombone sectionals. And, well, then if you're going to do that, you can't be on the team anymore, right? That's the thing. That's the bias we have to get rid of. And I don't know how you necessarily do that, but I know administrators can help a lot with what don't just talk the talk, walk the walk.
It says, this is a good question. I want to get to this, squeeze this in. There's a shortage of quality music teachers in our area. Are there any pathways from the music industry into public education that you're aware of? That's a good question. Anybody know?
Not that I'm aware of, but I think it would be really cool
Yeah.
to have people come in and teach. Is that, or do workshops and things like that?
It's a really great idea. Well, we just said it. Maybe somebody watching on YouTube next Wednesday will say, oh, me. So leave us with this. The topic of this panel is why music matters. Make it personal, and then tell me what you would say, again, to make that final argument. I'm still hoping, like I said, that we reach more people in the days and months and weeks to come on social media when we talk about why music matters, somebody who's not able to be here today. For you personally, and then just in general, what would you leave us with?
I recently heard of a guy named Jeffrey Redding, who's from Florida. He won the Grammy Music Educator of the Year award. And CBS, did a nice piece on that story. And I'll leave you with one quote that came from him, Jeffrey Redding, where he said, in his words, he said, don't sing to impress, sing to inspire. You can take sing and you can put a lot of different verbs in there. So don't teach to impress, teach to inspire. Sing to impress, don't, sing to inspire. So that's what I would leave you with. That's what I would challenge you to do.
That's good. Why music matters to you personally, and then just our pitch in general.
Music lasts forever, and it's been around forever, and it will be here forever. And a person can maybe only, people retire from their careers, they retire from their jobs, but music can carry them forever. And I think that's something worth thinking about.
To carry you?
Oh yeah. Well, it carries me, yeah. From time I was born till I die, it'll be music, But even for somebody who doesn't do it for a living, that's something that they can come back to. It's something they can. It's a release, and so it doesn't go away.
That's beautiful. Barry, we're leaving you with the last word. Why music matters? Personal and then the larger.
Yeah, I mean, personal and all of us. I mean, I think we all have those songs or those artists that have impacted us in our lives, and that really is the fabric of who we are. And I would just say, if you took music out of our life completely, there would be a void there that we would all feel immensely. And so, why is that void not felt the way it should be in schools? It's just, it's just so impactful. So we have to fight this good fight.
Everything is cyclical. Are we optimistic that if we were to meet 10 years from now, we can say, you know what, we've really moved the needle. I think people finally get it. Are we optimistic?
Yes.
I'm not sure about exactly programs in schools, but like I said, music's not going anywhere. So yeah, I mean, I would really love to see more time spent in school on it, but it's going to be there anyway.
Can you give them a round of applause? That was fantastic.